We try our best, and we're successful. Come watch our show. Bet Rivers sponsors. It's time to start. Enjoy the show.
Welcome in, everyone, to The Breakdown with myself, Steve Wyss, and professional gambler Will White. How's it all going? What an incredible Champions League round. I make it 7 home wins, Will, 3 draws, 8 away wins. 10 dogs covered their handicaps in this round. And it was quite a dramatic evening, I must say. Towards the end there, I was on tenterhooks with a few fixtures that I was involved with. What did you make of this round? What did you make of this whole Champions League card? Are you up or down?
Hey, Steve. Hey, everyone out there. Yeah, another dramatic 2 nights of Champions League football. It's always seems to deliver, doesn't it, the Champions League? I am marginally up. I have so many bets, frankly, that, you know, it's hard to have a clean sweep either way. But yeah, marginally won more than I lost. What about you?
I had a good night. It was the corners that actually saved me tonight. Did well. At half-time, I took 2 corner plays. The Leverkusen match served me well for corners. And the late goal for Leverkusen was big for me as well. It was a funny game, that one. In Newcastle were really poor first half. Then Anthony Gordon suddenly became unplayable. He's a player I watched, by the way, Gordon, in a lot of different things, especially on the penalties. But anyway, we'll come to that game at some point, I'm sure. This is the Breakdown show. And we're going to be talking about Champions League reaction, soccer in general, really, teams and ratings, perhaps a bit of betting advice as well. And we're going to maybe analyse some bets that were given out on the show over the last few days. And I think really, Will, we've got to start yesterday, actually, because it is the really big talking point at the moment. It's Liverpool Football Club. Inter Milan 0, Liverpool 1. Arne Slot heading into the game was the, I think, 4-6 favourite to be the next Premier League manager out of the job. Mo Salah, we know what he said at the weekend. He was left out of the squad. And Liverpool come into that match yesterday, you know, a lot of people against them. I was on Inter, and looking back, I think I might have made a mistake, really. But Liverpool, I thought, looked a lot better. It's not a penalty. It should have 0-0, but Liverpool definitely shaded the game. No doubt about it. Oh, talk to me about where you have Liverpool right now, and you know the Arne Slot position, the Mo Salah analysis as well. Are they difficult to rate, or is this a position where you just sort of stay calm and look at this sort of the underlying raw quality of the squad?
Yeah, I think there's a big betting opportunity actually when it comes to Liverpool matches these days. But that's not betting against them. It's I think the narrative is getting a bit carried away, kind of anti-Arne Slot. People are kind of reading too many headlines and getting even more carried away. Now we've got the Mo Salah situation. I went back and I looked through Liverpool's kind of horror run of their last 12 matches. They won the XG battle against Inter. This is so when we talk about XG, we're talking about expected goals. Theory being that it gives a more accurate kind of representation of what should the score have been in the match had both teams kind of converted their chances at a kind of more normal rate. So Liverpool, they won the XG battle against Inter yesterday, obviously. They won the XG battle against Leeds prior to that, won the XG battle versus Sunderland, won it versus West Ham, won it versus PSV, won it versus Forest, marginally lost away at City, won against Real Madrid, won the XG battle against Villa, marginally lost the XG battle against Brentford, won the XG battle against Man United, and won the XG battle away at Chelsea. And then prior to that, you know, the narrative was that they were unstoppable, right? When they won the first 5 Premier League games of the season with a lot of last minute kind of turnarounds, and they only won the XG battle in 3 of those. So I think my conclusion when it comes to Liverpool is there's been an overreaction both ways. At the beginning of the season, there was an overreaction kind of that they were unstoppable. And now there's an overreaction the other way. And if you look at the underlying data, really their performances have not been great so far this season, but they haven't been terrible. They've been below average. And I think maybe the Mo Salah situation will present an opportunity where we reach that kind of trough in Liverpool's rating. And maybe it does lead to more cohesiveness in the squad, which personally I don't think they've really lacked anyway. I haven't really seen many signs of that other than the Mo Salah situation. So yeah, I'm looking for opportunities to back Liverpool going forward. Sadly, I didn't yesterday. I didn't bet against them though, which I guess is a win of some sorts. So yeah, I think Inter are a very, very good team. I've said before, I think they're the best team in Serie A. And actually looking at my ratings, I still have Liverpool as the 6th best team in Europe, not in the Premier League, but in Europe, which I think would surprise most people.
Heading into the weekend, Inter were plus 140 to beat Liverpool, and they kicked off about evens. And on Tuesday morning, I gave out as my advent calendar pick Inter at plus 100. Actually, it was Monday night, and I made them my third best bet of the day yesterday. And I look back and I think I got sucked in. Nigel did a great bit of analysis actually on the match on Betting Weekly Live yesterday. If I have a weakness sometimes in betting, it is on the really big games, especially involving teams from different leagues. It was like Man City tonight with Real Madrid. You're a lot better in that sort of thing than I am. Give me, I don't know, Dortmund, Bodo Glimt any day of the week. But I think I got sucked into that evens bet, mostly because I underestimated Liverpool. I knew after 20 minutes I was on the wrong side. I knew I needed a bit of luck. And I mean, for me, I look at that. And Arnie Slot said after the game, he said, if you look back, clean sheet against West Ham, Sunderland only created one chance against us. We didn't look like conceding against Leeds until the mayhem started. And he's actually right, really, looking back. And I think there's one thing in common for that is the return of the goalkeeper, Alisson. Now, there was a time he was the best keeper in the world. Quite where you'd rank him now, I don't know. But he gives something to that defense, I think, in terms of just like controlling them. And that's what my big takeaway was from last night. I think Liverpool might be on the rise defensively again. Forget about performances, results. Forget about Mo Salah. If Konate can just cut out his errors, which he did last night, then I think the Liverpool sort of train might be starting to get back in the station a bit. And for those who kept them high in the ratings, I think they were rewarded last night, no doubt about it.
I mean, if you think about it, Steve, what price would Liverpool be going off last season away at Inter? I mean, they probably be favourites on the draw no bet line, on the tie no bet line. So the market's already moved half a goal, at least. Probably would be minus a quarter. Market's already moved half a goal, and that's not accounting for the fact that Inter are very, very good this season. So yeah, I mean, individual errors, they catch the eye, right? And so it's very easy to write headlines about Konate's mistakes or about, Salah's being thrown under the bus or throwing Liverpool Football Club under the bus, depending on your view on it. But that's what you write the headlines about. You don't win, you don't get many eyeballs on your takes when you're writing headlines about variance and underperforming expected goals and stuff like that. So, I've said before in betting, there's more than one way to find an edge. You don't have to have a model. You don't have to be an expert on individual teams, but both of those things are routes to finding value. It's probably just very different types of value. Like you said, you've got very in-depth knowledge of certain teams and certain spots, and you hone in on those. Whereas if you've got a model, you're probably not going to have the time to have that level of depth of knowledge of certainly all the teams, let alone, all of the teams that play in European football. So yeah, there's more than one way to win at betting. My way is probably a bit of a combination of both. But yeah, maybe kind of for someone like yourself that's got real in-depth knowledge of certain teams in certain leagues, you are susceptible to kind of getting drawn into the headlines of the teams in leagues where you kind of have less focus. Yeah,
it's the same in international football as well. Give me like a Ghana versus Algeria, but if it's say England versus France, I'm probably not as well equipped. It's just the way it is. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, and I definitely got sucked into a trap there. Question for Will, Sir Sack Melier, goalkeeping coach. I find myself being swayed following market moves in trying to pick winners, and this takes away from me looking for value. How can he shift that mindset? I mean, it's not the worst thing, though, is it, to be swayed by market moves sometimes? Because if you do follow the money, often it will lead you to some success.
Sure. I mean, the way I would answer that is you've got to be aware of the market moves and what they mean, and use that to update your priors, or your kind of priors being your prior beliefs or your prior ratings on certain teams. Maybe you're consistently under or overrating a team. You might be right. You might have an edge on that particular team versus the market, or you might just be very wrong. Figuring that out is quite difficult because you need a kind of sample size to be able to really properly reflect on that. But sometimes you just get a feeling. I know there are certain teams that I under and overestimate, but generally I'm comfortable with that. But it does take time to. I wouldn't, certainly one thing I wouldn't do is kind of look to back teams after the market has moved. Whenever I see the market move, I'm automatically switching into, well, do I like the other side mode? Because it's kind of too late. Once the market's moved, it's too late. If somebody sharp is backing something at plus 100 and it's minus 120, it's probably not value anymore, because not many people have 10% plus edges over the market.
Quite a few comments about PSG today, Will. They kicked off, I do believe, at minus 120. And that was obviously quite a bit of a decrease, and it cost a few people. What were your thoughts when you saw that? I mean, you said that they were a bet at minus 141, so I presume you did get on them, unless the team news swayed you otherwise.
Yeah, I got on them at minus 120. Not super heavy, but a normal size bet. I thought they were unlucky to win the game. They controlled the game. They had the better chances. They had more than enough to score at least once. And that is one that I'd bet, 100 times out of 100. I think that's an auto bet for me, because I feel like I had a read into Athletic Bilbao and kind of their exertions over the past week. They did go stronger than I'd hoped. I mean, they basically went full strength. Bilbao did. So did PSG minus Dembele and Chevalier. So yeah, I'd bet that again every time. I think PSG bettors basically got unlucky there. I think it was the right side.
I'm with you. I'm totally with you there. They should have won the game, no doubt about it. The Great One says, I told you guys, Benfica game will have at least 2 goals. They did win 2-0. The 2 over Asian goal line of 2 did push. And Ming Chung says, great pick on Benfica, Will. You absolutely flagged that one up on the show earlier. Well done on that. The Daily Double, of course, has won. Both you and Nigel delivering this week on the Daily Double winner. And there is the Daily Double winner on screen there. That was it today. Paphos +3 and Real Madrid Man City over 2.5 goals. Paphos, somehow we ended up sweating for that one. Weston McKennie, don't get me started on this guy. One of the worst players I've ever seen to play for Leeds in the Premier League. Whenever I see him play for Juventus or even the USA, he just seems to turn in some brilliant performances, and he scores goals. The opening goal he scored today was quite impressive. I just think he must have had a bad time of it in Yorkshire, the more I think about it. But it does show you the differences perhaps between Serie A and the Premier League as well. We'll talk about that soon. The other part of that double was Real Madrid Man City. That was cashed by half-time. No more goals in the second half, surprisingly. I have to say I was watching that game, and thankfully I forgot to pull the trigger on over 3.5 in play, because it just looked like there was going to be at least one more goal somewhere. But really, we've got to talk about Real Madrid. Rui Barlow was on Instagram before the game saying if they lose the game, Xabi Alonso, he might get sacked potentially. Look, I have sympathy for him tonight. He's missing a lot of players, but something's not working at Real Madrid at the moment, and I don't know what it is. You have a good insight into Spanish football. Are we at a position already where Xabi Alonso just might not be the right fit for Real Madrid?
I mean, it's another sensationalized headline, but when it comes to Real Madrid, more likely to be closer to the truth. And yeah, quite incredibly, in my opinion, Xabi Alonso probably is under pressure. But that's just the nature of managing Real Madrid. I mean, Real Madrid have also won 14 out of 16 in the league when it comes to the XG battle. Probably underperformed that slightly in the Champions League. They were the lesser of the two teams tonight, albeit Mbappe couldn't even come off the bench, and they were missing a lot of players at the back up against a full throttle City at full strength, with the fans potentially waving the white hankies. I mean, it wasn't a great setup for Real Madrid in this game. The market told the story. City went off -0.5. They went off +100. It's unbelievable away at Real Madrid when they were +300 this time in February this year. So yeah, I mean, I understand why Xabi Alonso is under pressure. Again, if I were to be advising the Real Madrid board, I would be advising them to give him time. I think Xabi Alonso is a very talented up-and-coming manager. Look what he did with Leverkusen last season. Yeah, I don't know. I think, if we get two knee-jerk reactions in Liverpool and Madrid, I'd be more than happy for Liverpool to welcome Xabi Alonso as manager, which some people are already talking about. It doesn't surprise me, but yeah. What do you think about Xabi Alonso and Real Madrid?
Well, I said it before, nearly every manager we talk about is talented. If they're managing in the top flight of a league, they're usually quite talented, but it's the fit of the manager at the club. And the thing that keeps coming up is this high work rate that he demands from his players. And I don't think the likes of me and you could ever disagree with that. But the pampered souls of Real Madrid are used to something completely different under Carlo Ancelotti. He's probably one of the best ever man managers ever there's been in the game. And it's a big contrast when you're going from being allowed, days on the golf course or whatever, vacations to Brazil for some of the Brazilians, to suddenly this high work rate. And clearly they don't like it. It's a big change. And, Alonso might just not suit this current group of players at Real Madrid. Put him in a different environment, he will absolutely, no doubt, excel. But I'm interested to follow this one, because the thing is, if they get rid of him, who they're going to bring in? Like, who's going to do a better job mid-season for Real Madrid?
I mean, there'll probably be names like Jurgen Klopp banded around, and but he's going to demand a high work rate. I mean, I think Pep was asked about this in his press conference before the game, and he kind of alluded to the fact that Pep Guardiola himself is in a seat where there is a really great phrase in Spanish that el que manda. It's basically kind of like the one that's the boss, the one that gives the directions, the one that says how things are going to be. And that's Pep Guardiola at Man City. But that's not Xabi Alonso or really any manager, even the Carlo Ancelottis of this world at Real Madrid. There's always the hierarchy. There's always, the manager does not have full control. There's always the Galacticos. And so, it's a really, really tough job. Maybe he's not the right fit, but I would still suggest that Real Madrid, maybe this is time for them to kind of recognize that maybe the Galactico era is not over, but that they need to find some sort of middle ground, and they need to basically give the manager the power Xabi Alonso needs in this situation, and choose him over the dissenters.
Gineppi's right. The Real Madrid environment is very complicated to handle for the manager. Absolutely, no doubt about it as well. And good to see you've profited today, Gineppi, as well. It's one of those situations where La Liga, it's not been the greatest round of Champions League for La Liga. The Villarreal game earlier, my goodness me, I got that completely wrong. That was the biggest winner on the card, actually. FC Copenhagen +600, won on the money line there. The biggest winners of the round were FCK at +600, Ajax at +220, Atalanta yesterday +240, and the draw in the Dortmund game today at +400. Where do you have? Is La Liga a bit weak at the minute, Will? I mean, where do you have the likes of Real Madrid and Barcelona at this point in time?
Yeah, I think it is. I remember a few weeks ago on the show, on the Betting Weekly Live, we were talking about the difference between the Premier League clubs' record in Europe this season and the La Liga clubs, and there was a vast disparity. The Premier League team's very dominant. La Liga teams underperforming. We saw it again this midweek. I think that's 0 of 4 Spanish teams winning and 4 of 6 Premier League teams winning. Premier League teams having arguably the harder fixtures as well. I don't really know why that is. The 2 factors I would suggest probably most important. One is just the money, the economics of it all. The fact that Premier League teams can buy the best players really across the world, really. And La Liga teams are kind of constantly recycling. And yes, Barcelona, Real Madrid, and to a certain extent Atleti are kind of insulated from that, and they can go out and spend the money. But you know, on a weekly basis of competing and the level of competition you're playing at in the Premier League, we know it's the fastest, most technical, most high octane, most demanding league in the world. And when it comes to competitive level week in, week out, Premier League players are used to that. And so maybe, if anything, when they go and play in Europe, it's a bit of a step down in terms of the kind of energy required and maybe technical level and speed, really. So La Liga, I mean, it's probably on a similar level to, obviously, the top 2 or 3 teams are on another level, but maybe you could argue that teams like Inter, certainly Bayern Munich and PSG, are you know, on the same level of Real Madrid, Barcelona at least, and that there's not, you know, going back the last few years, you would say that Barcelona and Real Madrid are on another level to Inter Milan, but it's probably not the case anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you about the Premier League teams because, you know, I've obviously got done up by one yesterday. I nearly got done up by Newcastle today. And when I watch these Premier League teams in Europe, the thing that always stands out to me is the physical side of it. I mean, in the second half today, Bayer Leverkusen, they couldn't deal with the sheer physical nature of Newcastle. As soon as the ball was put in the box, there was panic, there was calamity. Yesterday, I thought Inter lacked a bit of bite in that way. They just lacked a bit of sheer physicality in terms of strength, I think I'm talking here, not even pace to a degree. The Premier League is really strong. Arsenal tonight have won 3-0 at Club Brugge with that's not the greatest 11 for Arsenal, certainly defensively.
Yeah.
You know, how's that defence keeping a clean sheet? Seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, but very impressive. It's such a strong league, is the Premier League now. And I can't look beyond a Premier League winner at this point in time for the Champions League, unless the season catches up with them. You know, there's a long way to go.
That's the other factor, right? Which is that physicality, that energy week in, week out, often twice a week, may start to count against the Premier League teams when it comes to the end of the season. And that's where teams like, especially PSG, I know I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, that's where teams like PSG might benefit. And maybe PSG are kind of timing their resurgence perfectly, especially given they had such a long season last season and summer. And PSG look really good tonight, to me anyway. They look really good. They look really good at the weekend. They're getting healthy. So, yeah, it remains to be seen whether Arsenal and City in particular can maintain their level until the end of the season. I think they've got deep enough squads too, but particularly Arsenal. And I think Arteta will be aware of this. And, yeah, it remains to be seen, though. It's hard to look past Arsenal, really, or City. But I did say a couple of weeks ago, PSG, they were a plus 800 to win the Champions League. That might start looking very attractive when we get into February and March.
Mr. Promise said Arsenal look great. He's considering the Premier League and Champions League double. They're minus 155 to win the Premier League with Bet Rivers right now. There's no latest odds for the Champions League, but there'll be a few looking at that one. Just looking at some of the comments here. Annie, R18, Dortmund cost me a double. Annie, Dortmund have cost me more than one double over the last few years. I know exactly how you feel. I was actually really pleased. I won a bet on a Dortmund game today in play at half-time on the corners, and I was delighted to see my Bodo Glimt boys they nearly won it, actually. An incredible own goal nearly got them a late win, Bodo Glimt. Just looking here through there. Real Brennan King says Alonso sounds like a young Bill Belichick in NFL terms. New life. Villa and Dortmund let him down. Villarreal, sorry. The corners served me well, Reese. Newcastle and corners go hand in hand. I'll be on the corners in that derby game at the weekend against Sunderland. Just going back to the Premier League, because we're not just going to talk about Champions League reactions and breakdowns here. One of the biggest sort of comments and questions we always get on certainly the Premier League show each week is regarding Aston Villa. And I know we've got a lot of people in chat who are Villa fans or follow the club, and they're doing really well in the Premier League right now. And the two questions that come out are Villa a legitimate top 4 contender? And secondly, potentially, are they even a dark horse for a title run? Give me your thoughts on Aston Villa, Will, and where you rate them right now in the whole Premier League and European term.
Yeah, I mean, I think the obvious stuff is they had a very poor start to the season, and since then have been on a really incredible run. I think what I'd add is they've got a fantastic manager. I think Unai Emery is one of the best managers in Europe, and what he gets out of the Aston Villa squad is total and utter commitment, and he gets the absolute most out of them. I actually think the squad is deeper than they're given credit for, and I think maybe they can sustain their run. What worries me about Villa, though, is their underlying data. And this is for a model man, right? Maybe the fans out there won't really care so much about the underlying data if they're getting the points on the board and they're getting the wins. But if you look at the underlying data, Villa have scored 22 goals in the Premier League this season. They've created 18 goals worth of chances. So they're converting at a higher than average rate. But more worryingly, they've conceded 15 goals, and they should have, if their opponents had converted their chances at a kind of more normal rate, they should have conceded 22. So actually, they've got a positive goal difference of 7, and they should, quote unquote, because expected goals, you have to take it with a grain of salt. It's one metric that gives you some sort of picture of how games have gone. But expected goals actually show that they should have a negative goal difference. And crazily, they should have 12.32 points less than they actually have. So they currently have 30 points. And if expected goals were to rule the results of football matches, which it doesn't, obviously, they would only have 17 points. And that's just an astronomical difference. So me personally, as a gambler, as a professional gambler, that really kind of my foundation to everything I do is modeling, is ratings, is underlying data, stuff like that. I can't get Villa on side to win the league, certainly not. To finish top 4, I mean, they're in a really good position, and a lot of the competition is not falling away, but it's just not performing that strongly in what is a very, very competitive league. They've definitely got shots. The market's got them about plus 150. I think that's about right, but they've definitely got a chance, and I will be cheering them on for all of the Villa fans in the chat.
Where do you rank Aston Villa compared to Newcastle? Because they often get compared a lot. If Villa were in the Champions League this season, would you rate them the same as Newcastle in this competition?
No. I've got them slightly worse than Newcastle, but, ratings have been proven wrong so far this season. And, I was saying to Dan at the beginning of the season, I backed Newcastle to win the league at 200-1, which now looks like a terrible price. Then I still maintain was a great price. Newcastle are kind of at the other end of the spectrum, really, to Aston Villa, in that they should have scored more goals than they have, and they should have conceded fewer than they have, and so they're kind of underperforming their underlying metrics. But I'm sure Newcastle fans would much rather have the points that Villa have on the board rather than be winning the underlying data battle. So it's a variance thing, really.
I was quite impressed with them in the second half today, Newcastle. Like I say, I think Anthony Gordon is a player to be watching out in the goal-scoring market, shots on target market. He looks healthy, and that can change at any moment with Anthony Gordon. We know that, but he looks he looked unplayable in the second half today. They couldn't deal with him on the outside. They couldn't deal with him on the inside. He hit the post at least once. They got Johan Visser came on for 2 minutes as well, by the way, right at the end. That is a brand new weapon that Eddie Howe can unleash. I think they're trending in the right direction. Villa, and I can't remember who I had this conversation with. It's about certain teams just always have a knacker overachieving. And it's somehow you've got to get on top of those sides and identify them. I actually think Cremonense are one of those in Italy this season where you actually watch them and they're better than what their metrics suggest. And I think Villa, if you actually watch them play, you wouldn't say surely that they should be 12 points worse off, okay, overachieving. But maybe they do contain those sort of players like your Buendias of this world who will score low XG chances. They've got a goalkeeper
They've got a fantastic goalkeeper.
Yeah, he's on an eccentricity level. He's about a 10 out of 10, which means he can produce a world-class save at any moment in time. He can make a gaff at any point as well, or not many gaffs, but he can produce something random. I think they're a fascinating case, Aston Villa. I really do.
Yeah. And I just don't. I think we can't underestimate the commitment that Emery gets out of that squad. I mean, every single man in that squad is absolutely fighting till the last minute, and I don't think you can underestimate that. You know, I'm sure all players in all squads are trying just as hard, but just the level of commitment that Emery gets out of that squad, it's not to be underestimated. And maybe that is, when it comes back to the kind of XG battle and the XG stats, Emery is one of those managers that just seems to overperform the underlying stats. And I don't know his exact recipe, but he's definitely got something. And there are other managers like that.
It is remarkable, and certain managers are the other way around. Graham Potter, wherever he's been at club soccer, he's always an underachieving manager in that respect. It's funny how it works out. I just want to finish the show by talking about another team in the Premier League, because they do at people's heads in, Will, and that is Chelsea. The world champions. First thing we've got to say, in a one-off game, they're capable of beating anyone. They've proven that at the Club World Cup. They beat Barcelona 3-0 in the last Champions League round, but since then it's been terrible for Chelsea. Is the problem? Is it as simple as saying they're too young and there's too many variations of the 11? Or, I feel like when Chelsea are at their best, they're knocking on the door of, Man City, Arsenal levels. But then there's no consistency with Chelsea. They must be a nightmare in your book to rank.
Yeah, because they're not a team I know that well. So I feel like I can't really pick when they're going to be on and off. And it seems that when they're on and off is basically aligned more with what their lineup is. Like when they're the full strength 11, the market seems to think they're going to be on, and invariably they are on. But, like when they went away to Leeds and kind of rotated 6 or 7 of the starting 11, the market thought they'd be off, and they were off. So maybe the market has a better handle on Chelsea than I do. But what I will say is I think Maresca's doing a fantastic job. And I know, Chelsea have spent a lot of money. I know they have a huge squad, but they're very young. They're very, very, very inexperienced relative to kind of the other big teams in Europe. And I think that is what leads to their inconsistency, basically. I think it's hard to expect younger players to be consistent week in, week out. And I think that's something that maybe comes with experience and cohesion and, playing together a bit more.
They've got a huge period of fixtures coming up for Chelsea. Everton at the weekend at home. Cardiff in the quarterfinals of the EFL Cup. And then over the Christmas period, they face Newcastle away, Villa at home, Bournemouth at home, Man City away. So we're going to find a lot out about them, aren't we, in the next few weeks there, Chelsea. I'm just going through the comments. I don't think I've missed anything here. Real Brennan King is absolutely right about the betting breakdown splits, where most of the money yesterday was on Liverpool. We had exactly the same today with Ajax. Ajax had significantly more money, but Karabakh had the tickets. Sometimes you do follow the money. That was a crazy end, by the way. Ajax winning earlier. I couldn't believe what I was seeing there. The rain was pouring down, and there's a saying in the Premier League: never bet the early kickoff. Maybe we need to look at the Champions League and say the same thing.
Well, we did get Oscar Gluck in. We only had him for a shot on target, close to even money, and he scored twice. Standout player really for Ajax. Probably is their best player actually.
Saw a lot of people congratulating you on that pick. I think there was a few laddering him as well, Will.
Really?
For more than one shot on target. So. And I got my shot on target play with Jens Petter. He scored. Again, where was the anytime scorer bet rather than the shot on target?
Yeah, we need to be a bit more aggressive. But then sod's law, when we are aggressive, they'll end up with shots on target, but not find the back of the net.
Well, it was a great pleasure, as always, to do the breakdown with you here. I hope everyone can learn a few things, some insights into the ratings. And, we hopefully will do some more of these heading into the new year. And, I think the general advice that you tend to give out on here is just stay level-headed. I think, would you say, don't get too high, don't get too low, don't get too sucked into certain things. and back sort of your beliefs for a longer period of time rather than the instant reactions.
Yeah, sadly, Steve, the way of kind of a professional gambler tends to be the more kind of level-headed and boring you make things, the better your results are. So yeah, less excitement for me these days than the old days, that's for sure. But profits are reacting favorably, thankfully. So yeah, maybe one day I'll go back to the old kind of emotional, throwing my TV through my window kind of reaction to stuff, but a bit more level-headed these days.
Yeah, you look remarkably calm considering the action that was on this evening. Thanks everyone who joined live or on demand. If you've got any questions and you're watching on repeat, then do put them in. I'm sure we'll do our best to answer them. But yeah, keep hitting that like button, keep hitting that subscribe button. Congrats on the daily double again, Will. And I'll see everyone tomorrow on Betting Weekly Live with Mr. James Eastham, who will be on the show, and we'll be breaking down the Europa League and the Conference League. So yeah, join us there. Be delighted to see you all. Take care, everyone, and have a great evening wherever you are in the world. Goodbye.